The Retirement Cafe Podcast, episode 11, empowering you to understand the value of your pensions with Henry Tapper.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In this episode, I welcome Henry Tapper. Now, Henry is a man who's passionate about helping people understand the value of their pension savings. He's had a lifetime in pensions, and 57-year-old Henry found it extremely difficult to combine and understand his own pensions without an extraordinary amount of trouble. This huge inconvenience led Henry to create AgeWage, which is an app that enables people like him to bring together and analyse their pensions. Henry wants you to know about the money you've paid for retirement. This means knowing how much you've saved, how much your investments have grown, and knowing what you've paid for that investment growth. With only 6% of people getting financial advice regarding their pension, AgeWage wants to provide people with something better than they're already getting. In this conversation, we talk about the key pension issues that they are looking to resolve and how their app will be funded and when customers can start benefiting from the service. So here's my conversation with Henry Tapper. So I'm really pleased to be welcoming Henry Tapper, who is passionate about pensions. Welcome, Henry.
Hi there, Justin.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm well, sitting
Good.
in a WeWorks in London.
Great. Well, thank you for joining me over the wonders of the internet, and really looking forward to having a chat to you about what you're up to in the world of pensions. And I know pensions are a big topic amongst my audience here at the Retirement Cafe. Henry, could you give for people who don't know you already, but could you give a bit of a background of who you are and why you're so passionate about helping people out with their pensions?
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I'm a 57-year-old male, to use the insurance company panels. I'm 57. I have, until recently, been having a number of problems with my pensions, despite having been an IFA between 1984 and 1995, and then head of sales at Zurich and Eagle Star, and after that, working as a consultant for First Actuarial. Despite having spent a lifetime in pensions, I wasn't able to bring together 11 separate DC pots into one without an extraordinary amount of trouble. And the reason that I am doing what I am now, which is setting up a new company, is to help organize people like me, people who are getting on in life, to bring their pensions together and hopefully spend those pensions successfully in later life. So that's me, and the company that I'm doing this for is called AgeWage.
Fantastic. So you used a bit of what I would call jargon there, a DC pot. Can you explain a bit more about what a DC pot is?
Oh, thanks, Justin. I'm sorry, everyone, for using some jargon. Okay, there are two types of pension out there. There's the type of pension like the state pension, which you get paid to you as a monthly amount. And there's not much you need to think about other than to make sure that the money comes into your bank account. There's another type of pension, which is called a pension pot. And that's built up not as a right to an amount for the rest of your life, but as a savings account. So when you get to retirement, you've got a great big capital reservoir, and out of that capital reservoir, you can pay yourself an income for the rest of your life, that kind of pension. And that's known as a DC pension. I've got a right to a state pension in 10 years' time, but what I need right now is to pay myself an income for the rest of my life out of the savings I've built up, the DC pension.
Great. And of course, the world has changed, hasn't it, over the last, through your working life. I'm sure that People would have had some kind of defined benefit pension, sometimes called a final salary pension, and a lot of those schemes have closed, and some people have transferred money away. And I know you've been very involved in the kind of the saga around British Steel pensions, which we might touch on if we have time later. But it's complex, isn't it? Pensions.
It's horribly complicated, and as I said earlier, even as a pension expert, I found it really hard just to manage all these little pots of money which I built up for a working lifetime in pensions and manage them into one pot so that I can spend them. It's very, very hard work. We hopefully will have some help from the government, who are trying to nudge along something they call the pensions dashboard. And the great thing about this pensions dashboard is it's going to help us to find all these pensions. That was one of the problems that I had. I'd lost touch with a few of my previous employers. Some of the insurance companies that they'd invested my money with had to sort of change name. Just tracking down where these pensions were. I had to go to various websites for the DWP. I had to speak with the ABI to find out who the insurance companies were now. And I even had to spend a little bit of money with a company called Experian, who actually found some assets which I built up somewhere, which had got completely lost. Quite a palaver, I can tell you.
Yeah. So the DWP being the Department of Work and Pensions.
Yes, that's right.
Organisation that will be able to tell you whether you've got an entitlement to a state pension, when you're going to get it, and whether they've got a full record of all the years that you've worked. And of course, the ABI being the Association of British Insurers, who will obviously know which companies become which. In my working lifetime, and I'm a little bit younger than you, but in my working lifetime, I remember the Commercial Union and the Norwich Union and the General Accident and the all these different Eagle Star and all these different companies, of course, who don't exist in the financial services world in those names any longer. So, yes, it can be confusing for people.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that this Association of British Insurers does have a register of what all the insurance companies become. So if you go to their website, abi.org, you can find your old pension one way or another. And the Department of Work and Pensions can help you in two ways. One, they can help you to find your pension, which you might have lost if it was a company pension. They have actually got a pension finder service on their website. So if it's an old-fashioned company pension scheme, you'll find that.
Great.
And they'll give you a link so that you can find out what you're due from the state pension. This has become a really contested, controversial area because the state pension isn't paid to everyone as they expect. It's changed radically over the last couple of years into something called the single state pension, and state retirement ages have also changed and are changing. So it's well worth you trying to find out what the state's actually going to pay you when you reach your particular state retirement age. Everyone thinks it's 65. It will be 65 for one or two people, but most people will have to wait a little bit longer to get their pension. And that's because we're all living a lot longer, and the pension can only pay out for sort of a finite term, or else the Treasury goes bust. So the government has been adjusting state pension ages all the time and pushing them back to take into account this increased life expectancy that we have.
Sure. So, tell me about AgeWage, which is this company that I think fairly recently you formed, and what problem is that trying to solve?
Three problems. First of all, the problem that people have immediately, which is that they need assistance in finding these pensions and in working out whether these pensions are any good. And what AgeWage is a system of assessing the pension pot that you've got and telling you how it's done. Yeah? And we do this through something called an algorithm. What we look at is the actual contributions that you've made over 10, 20, even 30 years. And we find out what kind of return, what sort of interest you've had on your investment. And once we've worked that out, we then reinvest the money in something called a standard portfolio. and we work out what return the average person would have had if they'd invested the money in the way that you did. Yeah, and if you've done better than average, we give you a high score, and if you've done worse than average, we give you a low score, and if you're absolutely average, you get 50. Yeah.
Okay.
So the very best score you can get is 100. The worst score is 0, and average score is 50. And this is going down very well with people. People like being told how they've done, and they come back to us and they say, "Oh, well, we'll do that with another one." And so we look at another pot, and we can tell them whether it's done better or worse. And all this is grist to the mill. People like this. They say, right, okay, we're getting to grips with pensions now. We're getting to know what's happened. Now, we need a little bit of guidance as to what to do next. And the second stage in our pension journey, and one which I'm very proud to say, we've just been joined in with by a very eminent lady called Michelle Cracknell, who used to run the Pension Advisory Service. She's coming to run this part of it. Is a guidance service which we're running within AgeWage, which will help people to work out what pots are best for them, which pots they should keep where they are, which pots they should merge with others, and what they actually need to do with these pots in order to give them the wage in retirement that they need, the age wage, as we call it.
Right.
So that's the second part, bit of guidance, bit of help. Yeah. And the third part is we actually equip them to get on in later life. And that quite often will mean fitting them up with a bit of kit, the right kind of pension and so on. And that's the E, if you like. The equipment is the E. The G in age is the guidance, and the A in age is the assistance. Assistance, guidance, equip. That's what we do.
Fantastic. So, I can really see how this is going to, solve a big problem for people. Now, there's a couple of questions. Obviously, I am an advisor, and one of the things that it can be a little bit dangerous to do is to make sure that when you're doing a comparison of what return you've got comparable to the return that Fred down the road has got, is that there's a number of factors that have come into play there. First of all, what was the decision of the investment that you made at the beginning when you took out that pension? And often if you've taken out in your early 20s, you may not have been that experienced about choosing investment funds. In fact, even if you'd taken out in your 40s, 50s, you may not have been that experienced.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Justin.
It may not be something you've been interested in. And then, of course, so that's one factor. And we know that statistics can be manipulated in all different types of ways, of one thing over another. And then, of course, another question, which I may kind of flip into as a secondary answer, of course, is the costs of these contracts. There can be huge variations, especially from the old legacy contracts, the old contracts that I come across. Trying to understand what people are paying for this stuff is hugely difficult.
You're absolutely right. And people want to know what they're paying. And they want to know what they're invested in, especially when they start building up quite a lot of money in these pots. The trouble is they didn't ask those questions when they started out, did they?
No.
We all know that we've taken financial decisions pretty blind in the past, and not all those financial decisions have been good ones. And I'm in no way having a go at you as an advisor, Justin, but some of the advisors in the past, frankly, were more like salesmen than advisors. Advisors today, they actually do the job of advising people what to do very well, but that's not always been the case. So we do find that some people have paid an awful lot for the management of their pension pots, and this is reflected in low scores. And we find that some people have been investing in funds which, frankly, haven't been very good, and this is also reflected in low scores. But I'm pleased to say that there are many people who have been investing in very good pensions, especially people who've been investing recently. And the type of pensions we've had really since 2000, where stakeholder pensions came in, and particularly since about 2010, when we've had these new work-based pensions as part of auto-enrollment, are a great improvement on what happened before.
And so I can really get that, getting this knowledge out to people is huge. The quandary that I see is the old, again, I'm sort of harking back to what I call I don't know if they're good old days, but just to the older days, is that when we used to have, interest rates at above 10% and mortality tables, i.e. the tables of working out when people die, we didn't live so longer, you used to get quite a nice return by buying an annuity. And that annuity, of course, which is a lump sum to an insurance company and for a guaranteed income in your retirement, was just a lovely way to have, to turn that capital sum that you'd worked hard and saved hard for to get that guaranteed income for yourself and your spouse. These things aren't so popular now, are they?
Well, no. And in fact, famously, George Osborne came out in the budget in 2014, and he said, "I can tell you, nobody in this country will ever have to buy an annuity again." Collectively, we all sighed a great sigh of relief. Because annuity rates, the rate at which you convert the pension pounds you've built up in your pot into a pound for life, an annuity, had plummeted. So, maybe in 1990, you'd have got £10 per annum for life from £100 worth of pension pots. Today, you'd be lucky to get £4 or £5 for your £100. And because of the fact that interest rates have fallen, the returns, if you like, on guaranteed returns have fallen, so the annuity rates have fallen to a point where people regard annuities as a bit of a rip-off. Now, they aren't a rip-off. They're still actually quite good value, but they aren't as popular as they used to be, because the rate of exchange between the money that you built up in your pension pot, this DC pot I was talking about earlier, and the amount of income or wage for life that you get from your annuity has fallen and fallen an awful long way. So nowadays, it's more popular for people to just pull the money out of their pot for something called drawdown, which means you're basically drawing an income from your pension pot rather than buying an annuity and having an income for life paid for you by an insurance company.
Yeah. And of course, that's a whole complicated decision in itself, isn't it? Because of course, when you chose your investment fund and your pension policy, or maybe you've chosen 8 or 9 over your working career, as you mentioned, you were trying to trace. You made all those investment decisions, and now you've got to make another investment decision, haven't you? You've got to make another one of, where do I actually have this money when I draw down off it? Where do I invest it? And of course, if you put it into something, you invest it in a stock market fund that then, I don't know, possibly plummets in the early years. You could be faced with a significant drop in income. How will AgeWage kind of guide people around that very difficult conversation?
Well, the answer is with difficulty. It's not easy. I'm not in any way suggesting that we'll be able to do as good a job as you would have done if you went to a financial advisor and paid for their services and had individual advice. But there are certain things which we can do under something called guidance, which will help people to make decisions which are better than the decisions they'd take if they didn't get that guidance. I know that sounds a bit of a cop-out, but frankly, we all need in life every little bit of financial assistance we can do when it comes to taking these really difficult, complicated decisions.
Yeah.
If I had a magic wand, I'd go back to the days when life was really simple and we all had defined benefit pension schemes where everyone got paid a wage for life by the company pension.
Yeah.
But we're not going back there. And we're not. If we are going back there, it won't be for quite some time. So what we have to do is make the best of what we've got. And the point about AgeWage is that it doesn't do the very best thing you can do for yourself, which is to go and get financial advice. But as only 6% of us are actually doing that right now, we have to accept that a very large number of people who don't take financial advice need something better than what they've got. And AgeWage is that something.
Great. Great. Well, I mean, I really love the idea that you've identified a problem and you've come up with a solution. I mean, we can all identify the problem, but coming up with solutions is the execution is, of course,
Right.
is always the difficult thing. So well
Well,
done to you for that. What will this service likely to cost somebody?
okay, well, that's a really good question. Now, we're just about to set off on what's called crowdfunding. We're going to be raising £2 million, would you believe it, between now and April. And you might say, that's an awful lot of money. Why do you need so much? Well, the answer is to actually provide the infrastructure to do all this kind of work and to work with the big insurance companies as we're doing and the big master trusts who run these auto-enrollment schemes. We're going to need to have high levels of technology, we have to have high amounts of support, and all of this is going to cost. Yeah. Now, how do we get payback on that? How do we reward all these small investors who are going to be crowdfunding with us? Well, the answer is there that certain financial transactions will generate for us a certain amount of income, yeah? And we will get paid quite a large amount of money by the insurance companies and their fiduciary organisations, the IGCs, and we will be paid by the master trusts for sorting out all kinds of problems that they've got. And one of those problems, incidentally, is that they've got far too many small pots. And they're totally behind our move to try and help people to bring all their small pots together, because it's not in their interest to have those small pots either.
So, I suppose the costing is still exactly to be decided. I suppose until at the point where you start delivering the service to the consumer.
Yeah, and we've already got some contracts in place with big insurance companies, so we know how we're going to get paid.
Yeah.
And the good thing we know as far as the consumers are concerned is that no consumer who downloads the AgeWage app will have to pay a penny for doing so. And everything that they do using our app will cost them no more than if they wanted to do it without our app. So in that sense, it's free.
Great.
But I wouldn't be so injudicious as to tell any listener that anything in finance is free, because there's always a cost to everything. You pay for it one way or another, but you won't be paying more for the services that we offer you.
And when would you hope people who as they're approaching retirement and have got these exact problems that we've chatted about this morning, when would you hope for the general population to be able to access this?
Well, we'll be kicking off with our AgeWage scores through one or two large insurers just after April of this year. That's the plan. And you'll start seeing AgeWage scores in all kinds of strange places. I'm not going to be able to detail exactly when, because they're still being under discussion, but a lot of insurers want to see these sitting on your pension statements, what are called your simplified money purchase illustrations, which is a horrible bit of jargon, the SIMPI. Other insurers want to actually send out AgeWage scores as part of what are called IGC statements, telling you whether or not you're getting value for money from your pension. So we'll start seeing these scores in public between about April and June of next year. It's 2019 already, isn't it? This year.
Absolutely. Great. Well, that's really brilliant. So, Henry, where can people find out more about maybe you and AgeWage? Where would they go and find out more information?
If they want to find out about AgeWage, a very simple website, agewage.com. It's not hard, agewage.com. If they want to find out more from me, they want to get in contact, it's henry@agewage.com.
And anything else? Would you suggest any other information that you'd like to? Of anything I haven't asked you that you think that our listeners might need to know?
Well, I think that if you're interested in this pensions dashboard and you want to have some inputs, the DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions, has actually got a consultation going on at the moment. So if you're the kind of person who likes to influence the way in which government thinks, I know the government would be delighted to hear from you. So if you go on to dwp.org.uk and you put a search in there and say pension dashboard, you'll get to their excellent consultation documents and you can read all about it there. Yeah, and if you want to, you can actually answer some of the questions they're asking the general public and feed into that consultation. I sort of think that this is as the idea of a dashboard is something for everybody. We very much hope that everybody kind of consulted with government about it. Obviously, not everybody will, but if you're one of those people who likes to do those kind of things, you've got until the end of January to do it.
Brilliant. Well, really informative chat, Henry, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to me today. Thank you so much. I really love what you're doing. I think empowering consumers to make better financial decisions in their retirement is what we're all about. So very much appreciate your time this morning.
And thank you too, Justin. It's great to talk with you.
All the best. Bye-bye. A big thank you to Henry Tapper, the Chief Executive Officer of AgeWage, for joining me for this episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast. Absolutely fascinating stuff from Henry, and I think any app or any use of technology that's going to provide the UK population with a greater understanding of what they're getting in the pension values and what they're going to get from it, and also, more importantly, what the performance, understanding the performance and the cost of that has got to be a great thing. So I'm all power to Henry. I think I wish him all the best and great success with this new development. If you've enjoyed this conversation, then you can subscribe to the Retirement Cafe podcast so you never miss an episode. You can do that on your preferred podcast player or on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you can also find the show notes for this episode and some useful links. We had a couple of reviews left on iTunes last week, which is fantastic. One from Cool Cat, so thank you for that, and for Barry and Liz. So really appreciate anyone leaving any feedback and writing us a review. Until next time, this is Justin King, and helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.